Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is the second episode of the DecenTalks podcast. Here, we're going to talk about how you are still early to the crypto industry. Just by watching this podcast, just by knowing what cryptocurrency is, you are early to the game. So don't worry about anything. Now, the market condition right now is in kind of a rocky spot.
Really rocky, yep.
Yeah, we've fallen down to about 41,000, and that's a pretty significant drop, at least from our current perspective. And headed into the beginnings of 2022, we could see a lot of drama happening in the crypto industry. But we're going to talk about all that stuff and more today. So Riley and Vugar, what do you guys think of kind of the market state that we're in right now?
Oh, it's not the ideal start, to the year. I think before the new year started, we were predicting, I think my prediction was 60,000. We're nowhere near that. It went down quite a bit. But I would just recommend just hodl, just keep your cool, and it's okay. This happens, volatility happens, and it's good for the market to have these types of drops.
Yes, as we think, this is not the first time it's happening. I think we all should hodl the coins for now. And as we said, there were certain targets that we were all assuming that it's going to hit. But during this year, we believe that it's going to go higher.
So now my question would be, why do you think it's going to go higher? What do you think it's going to take for Bitcoin to kind of recover, and Bitcoin and all of the crypto market? What do you think it's going to take for them to recover and kind of get back to those all-time highs that we were seeing back in November?
Well, we do believe that there are many projects coming in. So, for instance, like right now, a lot of projects, it could be about like the metaverse projects that are coming in, especially like they're gaining more popularity during this year. And also we are having this Web 3.0 coming in, which is like a huge part of the blockchain technology. So it seems like it will be a really interesting year ahead.
I would just like to throw into it's just maybe the overall acceptance of Bitcoin. Like there is a possible chance we could get a spot ETF in the States. The futures one came out like last October, November. So that's a possibility. Also for countries too as well. The El Salvador president did mention he sees two other countries, if I'm correct, adopt Bitcoin this year.
Wild speculation. What country do you guys think is the next one to adopt Bitcoin or any crypto as a legal tender?
Well, I would say currently one country that seems really prevalent at this point is Turkey. Their currency is having a huge inflation at this point. The prices are going up by massively. And also, Turkey is one of the top 10 countries where people are actually involved in trading cryptocurrency. So I would say it may be the next country that adopts crypto.
So what do you think of Erdogan, the Turkish dictator, and his very authoritarian policies on things? Do you think that he's got to have a change of heart? Do you think that he gets ousted and then, crypto gets adopted? How do you see that playing out?
It's a really tough thing to predict that right now, but I would say definitely there will be some sort of calls from the people to actually change towards crypto, because like currently, like I've been following some Turkish news and they're actually talking a lot, especially like the people keep calling about like how their inflation rates are pretty high. I think it was like 36% last year, and also like the government can increase wages by much, and they're also having this like current inflation rates due to like the trades that they're having, that like they're actually exporting way less, but they're actually importing a lot more products. So it's definitely a call on the people, I would say, and currently the amount of people who are bidding on the change is a lot more than before.
Right, like a people's revolution, sort of.
Exactly.
To drive adoption. Right, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, countries getting into cryptocurrency definitely is an indicator that this is still a very young industry. There is a enormous amount of activity in global financial markets, right? Especially from countries that we wouldn't think about very often, right? You know, a lot of it tends to happen in Western, very first world developed countries, but there's certainly financial markets in countries that don't make headlines all the time, right? You think about many small South American or Central Asian countries. You know, cryptocurrency will still exist for them too. So it's very likely that we'll see surprises, right? Yeah. And I think that we will likely be surprised in some form or another by which country adopts crypto next. And so when you think about the fact that only one country on earth, you know, El Salvador, has adopted a cryptocurrency as legal tender, the sky is only the limit, right? There are many countries like El Salvador that rely heavily on the U.S. dollar for their security, right? When you look at especially many South American countries that use the U.S. dollar as an alternative to their fiat, many of them would love to be decoupled from a U.S. sort of dominance, right? And Bitcoin, as well as other cryptocurrencies, decentralized ones, offer a way out for them. So I would think that it's pretty appealing, right? So yeah, that's just one area to link back to our original topic. Next, I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about public perception of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, especially if we ever encounter these sorts of downturns, right? Because every time there's a downturn, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, and people who've only been in crypto for a few months get really scared that their investments are going to be wiped out. And, you know, it's in the short term, sure, that's a very scary thought, right? And so I just want to ask Riley, because he's been around since the 2017 crash. If you remember, how did you feel when Bitcoin tumbled down into the 2017 bear market?
I think the big thing was, like, when that bear market started, I was actually out of the space. I wasn't actually fully involved until 2019. So during the 2018 area, like, I was just not paying attention to any of it. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people too. When bear markets do happen, people just stop paying attention to what's going on. They stop caring as much. The passion's not as there. But that's really where it is now. Like, if you really care about the space, which I do now, since 2019, I've been very committed into learning all about these technologies. And once you're in that state of mind, doesn't matter where the market is, you're always going to be in it. But those who are very fearful, they start losing that sense of passion, and I don't know, just like to be able to look to keep checking and to keep exploring these technologies, and then checking your investments and stuff. Yeah,
sure. And when those deep tumbles happen, sometimes people that that you've talked about crypto to, they might look at you and go, well, you're a fool. You know, you didn't sell your crypto before the crash and you held it the whole way, you loser. And in 2014, the price of Bitcoin fell from $1,100 all the way down to $320, I think. And so what a sucker you must be to have held from $1,100 down to $324, right? You're losing like 70% of your value. What a buffoon, right? At least that's how it looked at the time. And now, cryptocurrency is orders of magnitude larger than that. So when you zoom out and you think like, okay, sure, crypto's fallen from 60K to 41K and could potentially fall even further, right? Like, what if we wake up in a week or two and find that we're in the mid 30s, right, on crypto, on Bitcoin, right? It could happen. And there will be people who go, you know what? I knew it. I knew that it was going to tank, and it did, because of course it's going to, right? Everything that goes up comes down eventually, and then everything that goes down comes up. Well, most of the time.
And it's really healthy for the market too, to have these ups and downs. It's
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. And so when you think about it in the long scope of things, that drop from $1,100 to $300 means nothing. And more than likely, when Bitcoin recovers to its all-time high and puts in new ones, and we're looking at $100,000 Bitcoin or beyond
this year,
then a dip from 60K to 41K probably isn't going to be a very big deal, right?
It's not. Like, even if it drops even lower, if when in doubt, you should just zoom. There's a good saying: when in doubt, zoom out. Look at the big picture. And ever since it came in and Bitcoin started in 2009, It's been basically in a bull market since 2009. If you really zoom out and look at, the yearly chart, it's just been going up and up and up, and it's had these downturns of 80%, but it looks nothing when you look at it in a long time frame. So
Yeah, I love that phrase so much. When in doubt, zoom out.
when in doubt, zoom out.
It sounds good, right? Yeah, it sounds really good.
But I just wanted to throw in, like, just all the big investors, that's why they say, like, you should look at this from a 10-year perspective. This isn't, if you're going to do anything shorter than 5 years, it's more speculation. But if you look at it in a 10-year perspective, that's how you should go about this. So it doesn't matter what the volatility is in the short term. You got to be long term in this.
Exactly. And that's where all the opportunity lies. And that's why you're still early, right? All the risk, all the doubt, the fear, the anxiety, that's where the money is made. The money is made from taking that risk, accepting that risk that things could crash tomorrow, and being comfortable with that risk. That's where you make your money. Okay. If it was easy, then everyone would do it. If it was a guaranteed thing, then everyone would make money. Right. And luckily, just by listening to this podcast, just by knowing where cryptocurrency is, you're already ahead of so many people, right? And you're already you have a better chance of making money in the long term just because you know what this is.
And just to throw up, what was the number of wallets that they said that Bitcoin achieved last year? It was like 100 million. Sorry.
Something like that.
Around that, yeah. So it's still really early when you compare, that was just the number of wallets. It doesn't really mean how many users there are.
Sure, and the number of humans behind those wallets is probably far fewer than that.
Yeah.
And just with that amount of adoption, we see, $60,000 Bitcoin, a $4,000 Ethereum, et cetera, and a crypto market cap in the trillions, right? So imagine what happens once you start to get up to, like 1 billion wallets, right? Or 1 billion human beings using it, right? And we got a lot of human beings on this planet, okay? And we've got a lot of catching up to do as far as wallets and adoption goes. So I wanted to ask Victor what he thinks kind of the future is like for adoption and, people getting into crypto.
Well, crypto is, from my perspective, is a broad term. I believe that blockchain will have a huge impact in the future. So far, we have seen that many companies, startups, are starting to see future on this technology, and it has been deployed not only in the finance aspect, but in other areas such as healthcare, governance, and so on. Right now, we have seen that we're still early in seeing or investing these projects, because it's just people are just seeing the potential that blockchain has. In the future, we can see this technology, blockchain, to have a very broad impact in our lives, just as internet is right now. Like if we compare it with the .com boom, we can see that we are just starting to see the potential of blockchain. Of course, right now there are a lot of crypto projects that are starting. That doesn't mean that all of them are gonna exist in the future. There's gonna be a selection for these projects that we as its users will play a huge impact in deciding which ones are the best and which ones we should invest on. And at the end, it's what the people believe and they see value, what we can ensure that it's a very safe investment.
I have a question. It's an interesting point to bring up the .com bubble, right? Because the .com bubble grew very rapidly as people discovered the technology of the internet, right, and the web. And then it was very quickly followed by the .com bust, right, when people realized that some websites have value and some do not, right? And the market kind of made an evaluation about what projects are valuable. And it's interesting to hear that, like, because I agree that, I think there are a lot of crypto projects where we're applying blockchains to things that maybe don't need a blockchain, and a centralized database is probably good enough, right? Yeah. And so do you think that like just like the dot-com bubble. The dot-com bubble happened pretty early on in the internet's life, and then as the internet matured, things got a lot more stable. Do you think crypto and blockchain are headed in that same direction? It just needs more maturing.
Well,
Vugar can go. Yeah.
so I would say similar to the dot-com bubble situation, I would say we will definitely see some projects that are going to be successful over the long run, and we will also see some projects that are not going to be successful and that may stop exist over time. But I would say overall a majority we will see. I would say like a lot of the projects that we see that seem to be successful right now and provide lots of like utility to the users. I think we will see them still on the space.
I want to ask this question to Riley. Riley, what do you think is a criteria for a project to survive in the very long term? Like more than one bull market?
Definitely, like as Vugar was saying, making sure it has proper utility. Like there's actually providing good value to the users.
So what's good value? What's good utility? What makes that from just like some extra random project?
I think the big thing it really comes down to like how could it best serve like the space in terms of like is it what are they focusing on, like for example XRP is focusing on cross-border payments and like having really quick transactions. Bitcoin is the store of value of the space. Ethereum is the application, the computer providing applications and solutions for projects to be built on top of its network. So being able to provide, to be able to find what area that it wants to specialize on and be really good at that, I think is a really important aspect for projects to be successful.
I think those are all really great ideas, right? Really great foundations.
Yeah.
So what do meme coins do?
I would say there's a good saying that I forget who said it, but like Dogecoin is like the Seinfeld of crypto. It's just the comedy. It provides value because it creates that comedy and it creates a way of bringing people together.
And why is that important? So you have this comedy, this humor that it provides the space. And I think, people like to feel good about stuff. They like to be entertained. And Vitalik has said before that, we sometimes take ourselves too seriously in the crypto industry. And so it's nice just to have some funny money to play with, right? I think, and there is value to that, right? And it's easier to adopt something that's funny and fun and people actually use, right? So
I think the big thing too, it brought in a lot of new investors, like people that, I don't know, they thought crypto was like, oh, it's way too complicated and stuff. But when you introduce something fun, like a Dogecoin or Shiba Inu, it's like, oh, like this seems like really cool. I want to be a part of this. And once they get into those coins, then they're like, oh, like what's Bitcoin? What's Ethereum? And then that's where they can start to learn a bit more of these other things that are happening in the space. But it started with the meme coins that are just something fun. But I think it really just one more thing. It really comes down to like just the community as well. So if you have a good community, like at least in the short term or medium term, you can be very successful. When you have enough people in a network together, you have enough people supporting one coin. I think it could do well in the short term. But long term, I don't know about these meme coins.
Now you mentioned something very important, like meme coins, which are some like short trends. Something important to look in the crypto space is like the mega trend on that you are looking to invest. One mega trend that is surging right now, it's privacy. So projects that try to solve or put privacy in some sectors that we have not seen before, it's gonna be a good way to to invest. But also we do not have to confuse privacy with transparency. Projects that try to offer privacy with transparency are gonna be the ones that are gonna at the end dominate the space, because of course governments don't also want to have transparency with them, with the people as well.
So I want to clarify. What do you mean when you say the difference between privacy and transparency? How can something be both private and transparent?
That's a good question. For example, when you want to collaborate with I like to see it in this way, like collaboration. Right now, if you want to get a service, in order to get the service, you may require to give some information, right? So you can give a specific information in order to get that service, but you decide with the company what kind of information you're gonna give, and for how long, and to who. And once that transaction of data has done, then you can get the information. But at the same time, something that we have seen with in the finance area, it's like there's also the amount of regulations that you need to have. For example, where the money comes from, like to clear and see specifically like the transactions and everything to avoid misuse of these networks, right? So it's important to take a look at that.
So I'm kind of curious on oh, you're handing it off, I know, but I want to ask you one last question, and that is what your thoughts are on the blockchain analysis firms that are popping up. So there's lots of companies now that are starting up, like Chainalysis and others, that analyze the blockchain, and they use that to try and link transactions together, link people to certain accounts, to trace criminal activity, to trace lots of other things. And given all this subject on privacy, transparency, information, control over information, it seems like these Chainalysis and other analyzation, like these blockchain analysis firms, have a tendency to sort of take that information to find it from the blockchain, regardless of whether you gave it yourself or not. So I'm interested to hear what you think about that.
Actually, I need to process that question. I'm gonna think about it, but I can respond it like in 5 minutes, just to think about it.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah.
What do you think, Carter?
What do I think? I think that they're gonna only become more prevalent. I think that they're beloved by regulators, but they're also beloved by just companies that want to better understand transaction data on a particular chain. Maybe they're an investment firm and they want to know what kind of transactions are being done on Ethereum so that they can decide whether or not they want to invest in a particular project, right? And in my mind, it's surveillance, and surveillance is a tool. So it can be a force for good. It can also be a force for evil, right? Depending on who is using it. And whenever you have these kinds of, the tool can be disastrously awful and it can also be super beneficial, you end up with these cases where a lot of people will say, well, we shouldn't have them at all, right? Because the risk of there being harm is perhaps too high, right? It's like the whole, nuclear weapons item, right? Or, but then again, nuclear does really great things in the energy production space. So should we outlaw nuclear anything because of nuclear weapons? Well, we decided not. And so I think the same thing is going to happen with these blockchain analysis firms. They're very intriguing. It might be fun to work with one day. But I think that definitely in the wrong hands, it could be pretty dystopian. And then in the right hands, you can gain a lot of very valuable insights to stuff. And a lot of our current understanding of how much value blockchains have comes from block explorers and these sorts of tools, right, that help us understand the chain. How many users there are. What's the total volume of transactions in a given time period, right? All these metrics that exchanges and CoinMarketCap and others use to evaluate the health of a chain comes from these sources, and we simply wouldn't have it otherwise. So I think they're gonna stay, and they're useful.
Definitely, I think when it comes to analyzing, even let's say the Bitcoin network, having these on-chain metrics and on-chain indicators that people are analyzing, very important. It's very it just having the ability to have an open ledger, you can really be creative and create new metrics and new ways of understanding what is really going on in this network. And it's really, when people say like, oh, it's hard to value Bitcoin, but like it's really, this is really like the financial records, as if you're looking at a stock. It's like, oh, this is what's actually going on, and you can analyze it anytime, anywhere, if you know how to do it. And it's quite remarkable, like to have that ability. And
So going back to the question, I think that because this technology is quite disruptive, it may change the way how we citizens we interact with governments and institutions. I think like this may change the culture of like data. For example, how you share your data, it will be profoundly changed with this technology. So I think like we will be able to decide how we want to share the data and for how long. And in this case, it may also change like the sentiment of how we look at this data, right? And probably we can start collaborating with these companies, and we probably can take actions even before bad sentiment could happen, because we may be able to detect something early on because of this vast amount of data. So I believe that this amount of data can literally help us to detect when it can be misused, because it's like there's a lot of information that we can collect about it.
Good answer. So I have a question. I have another question for everybody. Do you folks feel private or protected when you use crypto? Do you feel like your information is secure or private?
it really depends, I guess, what network or what blockchain you use too as well.
What do you
right?
feel safest using?
That's a good question. Like what? I guess obviously the privacy coins. There's no way of there's no way of tracing that at all. But then when you go on the exchange, though, you got to provide your KYC requirements. So
And not a lot of exchanges accept privacy coins, right? Especially the super regulated ones. Like you will not
Yeah, no.
find Monero on Gemini. Like,
No.
ever, right? And so it's on Binance for now, but you know, a lot of these regulated exchanges are going to say, look, we can't support Monero or privacy coins because you just don't have the blockchain information to go off of, right? So yeah, what do you think, Vugar?
Yeah, I would say it also depends on like in what context we try to define privacy, especially with the privacy coins today. I would say you can feel secure in terms of like sending transactions, but also like there's also like safety concern in terms of like how long the coins will survive even more. But in terms of like safety, I would say today we are actually able to achieve like highest privacy in terms of like storing the coins. Especially, I would say we have done a good job in advancing like the technology and like the wallets that we have, storing the coins and all those kind of stuff.
Good answer.
I think another thing to touch on too is how to secure your private keys as well. I think that's a really that can be hard sometimes. People may not know what to do, but that's also something that is very important as well. And I think it's something that you mentioned, Carter. I remember we talked about it before. Like, what are some tips maybe for maybe the viewers in terms of storing private keys and
Oh,
or like being more secure about that, right? And
well, yeah. I mean, first of all, if you don't have a wallet, like an actual wallet, you're storing your crypto on your exchanges and stuff. Crypto on exchanges is great as long as you trust the exchange. And it's very possible that that exchange could collapse eventually. And if they do, all your money is gone. And there's a saying which is not your keys, not your crypto.
not your crypto.
Exactly. So, yeah. So when you go and get a wallet, whether that's a hardware wallet like a Ledger or a Trezor, or whether even it's just like a hot wallet, like a bit of software, you'll still get your private keys, which is just a long string of digits or a long string of words. and those you typically copy down in multiple places, right? So whether that's on paper, is generally considered more secure. Or it's on, like a password protector, like a LastPass or something like that. Those are all very useful. But remember, no matter what you do, you will always have some susceptibility, right? Hackers are very intelligent, and there are very few ways to be 100% secure. It's just a matter of how much are you willing to spend to achieve that security, and how much effort you want to put in, and how inconvenient are you willing to let it get to get your money out, because the more secure that you have your coins kept away, the harder it will be to make a transaction from that wallet. And everything is always susceptible to the $5 wrench attack, which I don't remember if I talked about last episode or not. But have you guys heard of the $5 wrench attack?
I don't think so. No. Yeah.
The $5 wrench attack is a very common attack, and lots of people suffer from it all the time. It's where an attacker, a thief, will go to the hardware store and buy a $5 wrench, and they'll go to your place and they'll whack you over the head with that wrench until you give them your keys.
Oh, okay. I think you mentioned this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, just right.
I thought you were referring to as like a wrench, like maybe it's a little like software that they download or something for $5.
No.
It's able to.
Hey, old steel, baby.
It's an actual wrench, a real wrench.
Yeah, and they just right. And yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do about that, right? And then on a less violent level, you have like social engineering, right? So that's where you get scams and stuff, right? And there are so many scams all under the sun. There's just lots of different types, but they're very ingenious. They always revolve somehow on tricking you into giving up your own security somehow.
Right. Yeah, never give up your information. If you ever feel like, even if you sometimes you even get like a text message saying like, oh, from your exchange that you use, your crypto exchange, they say, oh, like this, you need to provide or sign in or something. Still don't do that. I don't know. Like, you gotta be very careful of what you do and how you manage
and the prevalence of scams, and it's very easy to lose your private keys or to enter them in wrong. With all that stuff, that is just a sign that we're very early on this, right? Because of how easy it is to lose all your keys and your money and stuff, that's where we're early. And one day those problems are going to be solved. The whole user experience is going to get fixed. A characteristic of Web 2.0, the old way of doing things, is the forgot password feature, okay? There is no forgot password for crypto, all right? If you lose it, you're dead. And that is something that needs to get fixed down the line, or else we're just not going to make it, right?
That's right. Also, something very important is like distribute your assets in multiple accounts, not only in one. Because if you have your eggs in multiple baskets, it's much better than having just one. So for a hacker, it's easy to get one private key than multiple private keys. And also, if you're going to storage them, do not storage them in the same place. Storage it in multiple places. Because if they find one, well, at least they just found one. Instead of like all your assets in one account.
So yeah, that's a really good point, Victor. Like, make sure you really diversify, like where you're storing all your coins and stuff. That's really important for if you do want to leave them on exchanges. Don't leave it on one exchange. Leave them on like a few different exchanges that you trust. So at least if one goes down, then you have a few others that you can still rely on. So.
Yeah, also, I would say currently we see some examples of exchanges that are also like taking like swift changes, or like taking swift actions to store customers' coins in a more secure way. For example, the Canadian-based ones, they're actually having like contracts with Ledger where they actually store more than 90% of all the coins that they have in cold storages.
Wow.
So yeah.
So there was a concept I heard of a little while ago from Loopring. I mean, the idea had been around for a little while, but Loopring kind of popularized this. It's called social recovery, right? And it's the idea of, like, they introduce it in a very sort of, newbie-friendly way where they say, if you lose your keys, we can recover them for you. And I first saw that, and I was like, what the hell is this? What kind of, centralized and like weird thing is this? And I looked into it a little bit more, and it's called social recovery, and it's basically just a multi-sig wallet where you take your keys and you split them up into multiple pieces like Horcruxes, and every holder of a multi-sig has to sign off on a transaction before it can go through. They have to provide their piece of your keys. And the way that social recovery works is such that you have your private keys and you split them up into a multi-sig wallet, but then you give those parts of those keys to individuals or institutions that you trust. So in Loopring's case, they suggest that like you give one part of your multi-sig to your bank, one part of your multi-sig to your parents, one part of your multi-sig to a really close friend, and then you keep the last piece. So the idea being none of those people can access your funds on their own. So you're still guaranteed by the sort of public key, private key security that we're all used to. But you have a way to recover your funds if you forget your part of the key, because everyone else will still have their part of your keys. And then at that point, once you have most of the keys reversed, it's very easy to get that missing piece. Like a brute force, like a computer that's running a brute force algorithm, like it'd be trivial, because like most private keys are either like 21 word or 24 word phrases. And they say that if you have at least 3 of the words in order, if you have at least 3 words in the order, you can brute force the rest in a meaningful amount of time. But if you have less than those 3 words, and especially if you have less than those 3 words, the amount of time it would take to brute force it gets pretty close to like the life of the universe kind of thing. So once you have 3 or 4 words in order of your key phrase, either because you remembered it or you gave it to your bank or something, and they still have it, then you can recover it. You can actually recover your private keys.
But if you lose your part, and let's say your best friend loses their part, then
it gets a lot harder. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But the idea behind social recovery is that you trust these other individuals with your keys. And the idea being that they would be separate enough from each other such that the bank won't hire a hit squad to go beat up your friend and steal your part of their part of your keys from them. And then they sort of just assemble the rest of it on their own because they're an authoritarian government or something, right? So there's still a catch. It's not a perfect system, but it's pretty good. And I personally see it as one of the things that will kind of help move us into that mass adoption so that grandma can access her crypto without having to stare very carefully at her seed phrase to make sure it's correct,
I think that's probably like where like the mass adoption would really come, is when we can really add convenience for the people that, right now they're like, oh, it's way too complicated. I don't want to forget these phrases or miswrite it somewhere. Or, oh, if I make a little mistake, you're going to lose all your coins. And it's very true. But I think once we get to a part where it's like the internet nowadays, we have no idea maybe how the internet really works, but we just go on our computer and we go on the website, we make a Facebook account, whatever. I think once we get to that kind of stage where it's just that easy and that convenient to just own Bitcoin and it's 100% secure, I think that's where it's at, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, how far did the internet have to get in progress before people started to use it? Okay, like you think way back, like in the in the 80s and the 90s and stuff. The only people using the internet were nerds, were the real computer scientist people, were the programmers that were actually coding stuff on that. Right, your average person couldn't possibly use the internet because it was too hard. You had to come up with a way to get servers and IP addresses, and you had to use certain protocols, and then there was different browsers were basically brand new and all this stuff, and so it didn't really catch on until it became easy enough to use for most people. And I think crypto is kind of headed in the same way, in that right now I think we doing things more manually than we'll ever have to do. I don't think we'll ever have to put in as much effort as we do right now to understand protocols, to understand keys, to understand addresses, to understand all this stuff. All this user experience will get totally changed in the future, and that's when kind of we get into mass adoption. And at the same time, that's where most of the profit will have been earned already, right? Most of the profit is earned when there's risk and there's challenge, and we live in a very challenging time. And that's how you know that there's still money and opportunity to be had, right? I think.
That's very true. I know. Can you imagine if we were back, like how it was back when Bitcoin first started in 2010?
I couldn't imagine.
Like how do you buy and sell? There's some things I read where it was like you go on, someone sends you like a PayPal, like a transaction over,
or you
over
meet
the
up in
internet,
a
or you
street.
meet them
you
up
know?
on the street. There was a book I was reading
Local
where
Bitcoins, you just
yeah, there was literally there was a book I was reading. It takes place in, I think it was New York, and there was just you go to a place where that, and then you literally you go face to face with someone, and you trade your $100 Bitcoin with them.
That's crazy. Vugar, would you do that if someone was like, hey man, you wanna buy some Bitcoin? I'm looking to sell. We can do this off the record. You want to meet up somewhere?
Honestly, I mean, back in the days, like I would say, if any person was exposed to that, they would probably assume that it's some criminal behavior or it's like something scam going on. But I mean, over time, like as we see, like as technology evolved and as people got access to more information about the technology, that is when like people started to look more into it and buy more into it. That's exactly what I think.
Yeah. What do you think, Victor? Do you think that as time goes on and things get easier, do you think more people get involved, or how big of an impact do you think like the user experience is in getting started with crypto?
I think the user experience is definitely something. It's the cornerstone of how the technology is going to be adopted. I have a memory when I first bought my first Bitcoin. I went to a website. I was peer-to-peer. I think the name was Paxful. And I was so scared about buying the Bitcoin. I needed to e-transfer. It's like sending money from one bank account to another one here in Canada, for the ones who are not listening in Canada. So I sent the amount, $200. To buy my Bitcoin, and then I was lucky, so I received my amount of Bitcoin 30 minutes after I did the purchase. But I was a little bit like, okay, it's $200, but at least it's not $1,000. So so I was quite scared, and that was a little bit also risky because I needed to prove that I was a citizen, like a real person. So I needed to send information that is quite private, like your passport, a picture, and a note. So at first, that was a little bit scary, because why are you gonna send all this data to someone on the other side, right? But definitely, I'd rather send that data to a company that I trust rather than an individual that I don't know what it's going to do with that data. Definitely right now we have solutions that allow you to trust them, and you only do that once, and then you get the crypto with your debit or credit card in some countries, and then you are all easy to get your crypto asset. In the future, it's going to be easier. Also how you do the transactions. Right now we are actually starting to see how you can purchase something online or in the real world with crypto. And I think that's gonna be the next trend, like crypto payments. There are already some companies that are starting to do that, like crypto.com and other companies in the crypto space. Yeah.
No, absolutely, Victor. There's a lot. Just touching on that. There's a lot of companies that are starting to get crypto payments, and a lot of them are making Visa cards and prepaid cards and way of spending out of your wallet, like Ledger wallet. Ledger's creating a card. I'm on the wait list for that.
Wait, Ledger's making a card?
They're making a way so you can spend money out of your Ledger account.
Oh, I see.
So in your Ledger wallet. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
Riley, I think you're a certified proud owner of one of those crypto cards.
Oh yes. So
Not sponsored.
not
but-
sponsored, but no, I actually just used it the other day. This is
show the cameras.
yeah, this is a free. It was a free one of the Crypto.com card.
It's the blue like plastic one, right?
The blue plastic one, but it's pretty good. You get 1% cash back in the Crypto.com token, the CRO token, on any purchase that you do, and it's very easy just to e-transfer from your account, your normal bank account, into the Crypto.com account, and you can just spend it like just a prepaid debit. So, I think it's good. Yeah, I would suggest it to people, whoever wants to try.
It's very shiny, so that on its own is like super cool.
But the touchback though, Victor, I think you made a good point with you have to provide a lot of personal information, like especially when you did that peer-to-peer transaction. Do you like, especially right now, like the way I'm seeing a lot of people are really put off by that, unless they're passionate about the space, and like they really want to try and get involved. But a lot of people don't want to give up like their passport or driver's license to they try this exchange so. Do you see like? I guess there needs to be some sort of maybe fix on how would you see that playing out maybe as we go along, because these are the early days for like something like this, and maybe as we go further, would there be easier ways people can create accounts and not give up so much information?
There is a concept in cryptography called zero knowledge proof. I think like we could, or in the future, probably that's gonna be something that is gonna help us to verify that a person is actually a citizen or is able to get the information or the asset that they want by providing the information. For some that are new to the concept of zero knowledge proof is basically an example. When you go to a bar or a restaurant and you want to drink, the person, the entrance, or the person that's going to sell you needs to verify your age, that you are 18 over or 19, or depending how old is in your country, and that's it. But when you show an ID, you show your name, you show your address, you show everything, right? So with zero knowledge proof, it's basically a computer analyzes the data and tells you meet the requirement without actually showing the whole information. So in this case, the waitress will look at the information without actually seeing all your data, and it will just have a check mark or not a check mark, like a cross. And then if it sees the cross, that means that you are able to get what you want. So I think that in the future, probably we will starting to see this as a mega trend for obtaining your account or something like that. And maybe in other areas of the crypto space.
Yeah, identity KYC, that's know your client, is a very sensitive subject. Obviously there's the one aspect which is you don't want to give up your identity, and you want to give up your personal information, and from just controlling your information perspective, that's important. But why is it that we're so sensitive about giving up our identity to governments and institutions? Well, part of it is because that information can be used to discriminate against people, right? And so it's very easy to forget when we live in Canada, the US, or sort of more free and democratic societies, that giving up your identity to the government is, we think that it's not so bad. Generally, it's a little inconvenient, but generally speaking, it's fine, and we do it all the time. But there's nothing more punishing than this service is not available in your country, right? And right? Because, and how do they know that you're in a particular country, right? I mean, a lot of times these days they know because your IP address, but you could spoof that. So how do they know? They know because that's the country of residence that you put on your ID that you submitted. So, like, you take a really regulated exchange like Gemini, right? Gemini has a lot of benefits and stuff, and there are a lot of things that people like to use it for. However, because it is a fully regulated exchange, they comply with international financial regulations, and those tend to exclude what, the FATF calls high-risk territories. And these high-risk regions are places like Afghanistan, Iraq, right, Iran, and other places. if you live in Afghanistan and you want to escape, the collapse of your financial system and the collapse of just about everything, and you wanted to use a service like Gemini, you just can't. You just can't because you're deemed a high-risk region. By no fault of your own, you can't because of KYC, because of giving up your identity, right? And then there may be other countries where certain members of the population, based on their ID, are not given the ability to do financial things, right? Maybe you're of a certain gender, right, or a certain certain sexuality. The criteria are endless, right? But if it's in your ID and it can be used to exclude you from services that require it. So it's very, very important that while, sure, we do have some regulated platforms for those who want them, it's also very important that we have platforms that don't require KYC and are able to be used by everyone, because really that's what crypto is all about, right? Is giving everyone the ability to access this stuff. And that's just on a broad level. I could go on.
Yeah, exactly. And also one more thing that I would like to mention is even like with some of the platforms here in Canada, me and Riley were experiencing that last time. It's like we put like our IDs and sometimes like because like I have like a ID from a different country, sometimes it takes them longer to respond to any inquiries about like, okay, why we are not approving your account and all those sort of stuff. So I think it would be really important for specifically like exchanges to only collect the data that they need to approve that this person is actually here to trade and it's also located and that person is also located here in Canada, let's say. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
Yeah, we have those moments sometimes. So one more thing I want to kind of touch on is that, it's this kind of going way back to that whole when in doubt, zoom out kind of philosophy.
When in doubt, zoom out.
That's right. When in doubt, zoom out. There's a website that I like to check every so often, or I just Google it rather. But basically, it's a website that keeps track of how many times Bitcoin has been declared dead over the years. You want to know how all right, wild guesses. How many times over the years do you think Bitcoin has been declared dead by news media?
I think I remember seeing this. It was 2000.
I would say still even today, like some people like Dan Pena, they still assume that it's dead by now.
I guess 5,000 times.
Okay, well, those guesses are pretty high. At least on the site I was looking at, they track it as 440 times.
Okay, all
That
right.
different news media have. But 41 of those were in 2021, and that's 3 times as much as 2020. So that's, of course, with 2021 being one of the best years for Bitcoin on record. So
Yeah.
it's funny how the more successful that Bitcoin gets, the more articles are written about how Bitcoin is dead, right? Isn't that funny?
It's funny because there's more. It's becoming more more accepting. Like Bitcoin's becoming more regulated. It's become more part of. It's becoming more legit. And at the same time, like you're saying, there's more times where they're saying it's dead. Like, oh, it's only getting stronger at this point.
If it was dead, it would not continue to be called dead later on because it would be dead.
It would be
right?
dead.
There
Yeah.
wouldn't be any more articles down the line saying it's dead if it really was dead.
Yeah.
So it can't be,
And in a lot of these times when they say it's dead, it's when prices go down. That's I can't be. I wouldn't be surprised if right now, given the market condition of the start of the new year where it's really low, there's a lot of articles saying, it's going down low. It's gonna, this is over. This is the end of it.
And also, if it disappears or it gets banned or something, Bitcoin has proved that the technology behind, in this case, crypto, like blockchain, is still a way and a solution for some of the problems that we are seeing in the financial space. People right now want to be able to enjoy and have a way to communicate and send payments in a very fast and safe way. And blockchain allows that. even though we're still early, we will see probably new projects that may overpass the abilities of Bitcoin, but still pretty early. We need to see the trends and everything, and also the potential of this technology.
Oh, that's a very good point. And then just another thing to add too, like if Bitcoin dies, the whole crypto space should be very, very concerned because Bitcoin is one of the most secure computer.
The OG, you know.
It's the most secure computer network in the world, one of the most secure in the world. And if that goes down, like I don't know, it's the most secure blockchain. So if that one goes down, then everything else is very vulnerable and could crumble as well. So like if Bitcoin, it's super strong. There's no possible way it should
I mean,
completely tank.
exactly. The internet was designed to resist nuclear blasts.
Same
Right?
with Bitcoin.
Right.
Same with
And Bitcoin is an extension upon the internet, right? And so it also is designed to resist nuclear blasts, right? Because if you were to nuclear blast a country and all the nodes from that country go down, well, that sucks, but at least there's, millions around the world to back it up, and you probably wouldn't even notice, right? So and even when in the summer when the Chinese hash rate totally dropped off a cliff, right? When they banned the miners and they all had to kind of flee, Bitcoin kept chugging along, right? The network didn't go down. All the other nodes that are spread out around the world were able to pick up the slack, and you wouldn't have noticed a thing.
Exactly, and like there's roughly 10,000 nodes around the world for Bitcoin right now, and all it takes is just having one operating, and the network keeps going. So you'd have to really wipe out every single computer that supports Bitcoin right now, and that's across the whole planet, and that's a pretty difficult task. That's a near impossible, very difficult task to do.
Yeah. And also, I would say, in terms of like what would happen if Bitcoin stops to disappear, we should also take into consideration that this technology is not only about like peer-to-peer coin transaction. It's also about like building the underlying platform for so many great technologies that will improve our lives further. Let's say it could be about like the decentralized social medias, or it could be about like the privacy. It could address the privacy concerns with our data. So it definitely has more utility than we think, and I think we are really early in this for now.
And if you ever think to yourself, my gosh, I really don't know what we're going to do with this, it's really hard to see where the value is, where the utility is, that's actually when you know that you have the value, right? Because when Bitcoin was worth $100, it was so early back in those days, you couldn't do anything with it really. You didn't have some of the features and some of the ecosystem that we have now. There really were only like 2 or 3 cryptocurrencies total. And so it was a much bigger risk back then than it is today, and that's why Bitcoin wasn't worth as much. And so as Bitcoin continues to climb in value and in utility, if you ever find yourself wondering like, where is it, I don't know, this is kind of uncertain, that uncertainty is where the profit lies.
And that's a lot of questions that people ask is like, what can you do if you're Bitcoin? And it's a big thing. Like there's maybe not a lot you can do with it right now, but the potential in the future is really there. What you can use it for, right?
Exactly. And it may not even have to be Bitcoin all on its own, right? You see things like wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, right? And many other chains have their own version, like tokenized version of Bitcoin. So you can still do everything that you want in the Bitcoin ecosystem and leverage the abilities, the software, the applications that other cryptocurrencies bring to the table. And I would argue personally that Bitcoin is better off having altcoins exist, having other ecosystems exist to learn from and to be inspired by and then interact with. I think it makes all of them improved, including Bitcoin. So yeah.
No, absolutely. And also things maybe not even in the ecosystem. It could just be like, let's say the stock market. Companies are now holding Bitcoin, are now getting exposed to it, and you don't even have to you don't even have to buy Bitcoin physically. You can buy a company that holds Bitcoin, and then you're exposed that way to the industry. And it's just remarkable how that it just came into play maybe the last few years. Like it's really a new thing. And I think looking forward into this year, or hopefully this year, maybe next year, would be the spot market ETF, and for the United States for Bitcoin. If that gets approved, then that's a new way for investors to get exposed into Bitcoin, getting exposed into the space. So yeah.
All right, folks, we're starting to get close to our 50-minute mark-ish, and so we're going to start to do our final remarks here. Right now, the markets are in super, turbulent mode, as they have been for a little while. Yeah, that's our friend there. The roller coaster headed downwards, right? Let's hope we can.
We're going down, guys.
Yeah, hopefully we can get him turned around pretty soon here. So, looking forward, are there any altcoin projects, or are you sticking to your guns with the blue chips? What do you guys' thoughts are on the next, few weeks ahead?
Well, I would say currently it's definitely important to look into the new projects as well. But for now, since like I would say especially the main crypto projects, or like the blue chip ones as Ethereum and Bitcoin, they're like really well priced right now. So I would say it's a great buying opportunity for those who.
If you have money just lying around.
Exactly, and this is not a financial advice, by the way. So letting you know.
No financial advice.
No financial advice. It's all your. It's
I will
all
say
your decision.
that, yeah, the wild speculation and all that stuff is just predicting is half the fun,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, as I always say though, like if you guys end up like getting into any projects these days, just wear your helmet and be ready for the roller coaster,
Yeah. And speaking of predictions for this year, no, I'm doubling down. $400,000 Bitcoin.
God.
400,000. No financial advice, but I said it was going to go to 200,000 last year. I think a lot of people really thought it was going to go above 100,000 at least last year. That didn't happen. So we got to double down. We got to really.
Okay, Mr. Ultra Bull. Okay, I think we were talking about this off show, but yeah, I know Riley's got a very, very liberal, very, extreme, bullish case for Bitcoin, which I certainly hope he's right. But, I think we're probably going to see $100,000 in 2022, before we get into an actual bear market, either at the end of the year or beginning of 2023, because we're really only 2 years out from 2024 when the next halving occurs, right? We really stretched this one out for a while, so I think that we're going to touch that 100,000. We might get a little bit above, 105 or something like that, 110, but then I think we're going to fall down into the bear market after that.
I think that's possible. And just one more thing to add, like, do you guys believe in the lengthening cycle theory that
Yes.
people are saying right now in terms of, every cycle, the past ones that we had has been getting longer and longer? Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yes.
Well, I would say, we're just looking forward to it. We'll have to see how that one goes.
I believe that the cycles are getting longer because the highs are also longer, right? Are higher, and I think like my predictions for this year are probably like 110, probably around that.
400,000.
No.
400.
No, Victor, you're a man after my own heart.
But definitely, as we go further into these cycles, there's less inflation on how many coins are produced every block, and I think with that, I don't think the halving will have as much as an impact. These 4-year cycles won't really become much of a thing as we get further and further into Bitcoin being more and more adopted. I think more impact would come from Bitcoin being readjusted on balance sheets, even like that would cause more impact on price than the actual 4 years of the halving, I think. So.
All right, folks. That's going to do us for today. All right, this has been the second episode of the DecenTalks podcast. You can find all our socials on the page. Thank you so much for listening. Stay safe out there. This has been us here at DecenTalks. Have a great one.
Have a decent day. Be decent. Have a decent day.
Have a decent day.
Have a decent day, y'all.
Decent times. We'll talk to you decently
Okay,
next time.
bye-bye.
Have a decent one.